Turning attention now to U.S. politics, United States President Joe Biden and former Republican President Donald Trump have both won the primary election in the state of New Hampshire, which is strategic to their candidacy for the November presidential election. It is becoming clear that both men will meet again at the polls to slug out the battle for America's leadership seat. I will have a report.
Please welcome to the stage.
As the race to the #1 seat continues in the United States, President Joe Biden has won the New Hampshire primary, almost 2 times the Democratic turnout as it was in 2012. His supporters are excited about this strategic win, and they are confidently describing it as an overwhelming victory.
With almost 2 times the Democratic turnout as 2012, this is an overwhelming victory. Not bad for a writing campaign, huh? Look, friends, today we made a statement. With all eyes on our first-in-the-nation presidential primary, we showed what a group of determined Granite Staters can do when our democracy is at stake. This wasn't easy. It wasn't always pretty, and it was certainly unconventional. But no matter what was thrown our way, this incredible team of volunteers here in the room tonight and all across the state, we rallied, we mobilized, and we delivered a win for President Biden tonight.
Mr. President, this was totally unannounced. Nobody knew.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump also won the New Hampshire Republican presidential primary, the second state contest to determine the Republican Party's presidential candidate. When about 90% of the vote was counted, Mr. Trump had over 12 points ahead of his last rival, Nikki Haley. Due to his major victory, President Biden says it is now clear that Donald Trump will become the Republican nominee in the election. But Nikki Haley says the race is far from over. She will keep fighting until the vote in her home state of South Carolina will come up next month. In his victory speech, Donald Trump called Nikki Haley an impostor.
We've won almost every single poll in the last 3 months against crooked Joe Biden, almost every poll. And she doesn't win those polls. And she doesn't win those. This is not your typical victory speech, but let's not have somebody take a victory when she had a very bad night. She had a very bad night.
Mr. Trump's former rivals, Vivek Ramaswamy and Tim Scott, have endorsed him for Republican candidacy for the U.S. presidential election. Americans will vote in November, and the presidential contest is already looking to be a Trump-Biden rematch.
And joining us now via Zoom from New York for an analysis of the outcome of the vote in New Hampshire, and that's within the framework of a deeper look into American politics, is a global affairs analyst, Okenfe Liberty. Good to have you join us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Nikki Haley had really high hopes going into New Hampshire. She had hinged her nomination strategy around New Hampshire. What happened to that strategy?
Well, she never had a strategy to begin with. Her hope was diminished. And I think what we now know, which we've actually known for a while now, but after last night it was confirmed that the general election has actually begun. And it's going to be between Donald Trump and President Joe Biden. What is actually interesting about this whole situation is the fact that you have 14 or so potential candidates from the Republican side, and it seemed none of them was actually running against Donald Trump. You know, Donald Trump has been indicted, facing so many criminal charges, and all 40 candidates could not even do anything, right, to tarnish his image. So for me, I thought the entire Republican primary was just an audition for who Donald Trump is going to select as a potential vice president. The whole thing really made no sense. right? And even when you ask Donald Trump, he will tell you the same thing. Why were these people running? Nikki Haley had so much opportunity after the other candidates dropped out to really define Donald Trump, right? To talk about all the charges that Donald Trump is facing, to talk about his 4 years as the former president. And she just could not deliver. Why? Nobody knows.
And you say that, but Haley says this race is far from all over. And then she also vows to fight on until the vote in her home state of South Carolina next month. But as you watch her campaign and as she goes into South Carolina, rather, is there still a short path to victory for her?
No. Nikki Haley has zero path to victory. The question that she's got to ask herself today is, as a two-term governor of South Carolina, do I want to go back home and get humiliated by Donald Trump? Because it is clear that Donald Trump is definitely going to win South Carolina. Does she want to risk her popularity, right, and lose to Donald Trump by 20% or even 30%? Who knows? But Donald Trump is going to win South Carolina. She is in a certain stage of grief right now, right? So she really got to go back home, have a conversation with her family members, have a conversation with her team, and figure out when she's actually going to drop out. She might even drop out before South Carolina, election actually happens. We don't know. But again, what is baffling is that this was a two-person race, and Nikki Haley could not even throw the kitchen sink at Donald Trump. That to me is just baffling.
And he never, and that's Trump, he never even participated in any of the debates.
Nope.
Has he now proven to be too strong at this point for anyone in the Republican Party to beat? And what does this say to his critics in the Republican Party?
For the past, probably since 2016, the Republican Party has been a party of Donald Trump. And the American people know who exactly Donald Trump is, whether you like it or not. He is who he is, right? And he's got the Republican Party right now to himself. And what also happened is that for the past couple of years, Donald Trump and his team were able to work themselves throughout the entire Republican Party all over the country to really cement and go through the rules committees to make sure that he was going to come out as the nominee. All these folks, they never really had a chance to begin with. Donald Trump was spending a lot more time going to, going to court cases that he never even really needed to be attended in the first place. And everybody else was just out there campaigning. And like I mentioned earlier, this was a campaign about who was going to be his potential vice presidential nominee. And unfortunately, knowing Donald Trump, I don't even believe he's going to pick any one of them.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, because every time I see Tim Scott behind Donald Trump, it's the first thing that pops in my head. He wants to be vice presidential candidate. But let's talk about activities on the fringes of these political parties as well. On the Democrat side, we're seeing Democrat from Minnesota, Dean Phillips, who says he's running against President Biden for the nomination. Also, a third candidate, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., will stand in the presidential election as an independent. What impact will this have overall?
Zero impact. Those two candidates, they are in over their heads. Joe Biden is going to be the Democratic nominee for president. He is running for re-election, and there is absolutely nothing that is going to stop. I don't even know what Joe Kennedy is doing, to be honest. I don't know what is the point of his candidacy. If you look at what actually happened in New Hampshire yesterday, Joe Biden wasn't even on the ballot. He was not on the ballot. So, people got together and just did a write-in campaign for Joe Biden. And he still won by 60-something points. He wasn't even on the ballot. So that goes to show you what is actually going to happen. So those two other candidates, they are wasting their time. And it's funny that people tend to forget history. In the history of American presidential politics, there is no third party that has won any nomination. The only thing that they do is just that they are spoilers. Right. So these other two guys, I don't know who they are. They just wasted their time.
Well, it's safe to say at this point, it's getting even more interesting, our following developments in the U.S. Thank you so much for talking to us, as always. Global Affairs Analyst Okenfe Liberty.
Thanks for having me.